Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at gcnlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to the USA Prepares. We're delighted you're here on this inauguration day. As a matter of fact, many of us didn't fully believe that we'd actually get to this point after 8 years of the previous regime. We're broadcasting 2 hours live from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains, Monday through Friday, 9 to 11 a.m. And if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. We have a telephone listen line. And if you're not in the Washington, D.C. area, your cell phone may work fine. 605-477-3249, 605-477-3249 is our listen line. John is engineering the broadcast. Dr. Doug Leigh is with us, and we're going to be talking about cats. Cats. North American families have more cats than dogs. Don't they, Dr. Leigh?
I believe that's true. Of course, the cities have cats unbelievably, because you can put a cat in an apartment and there he is. All you need is a litter pan, food, and some place to look him up to have. He can look out the window and see what's going on in the outside world. He's very happy. But there are a lot of cats in this country. Now,
and you don't have to walk them.
Of course, you have farm cats. A lot of cats out in the farms. I believe you live in the country. I don't know whether you have cats or not. But if you have cats and all of a sudden you look around and they're all gone, pretty much what's happened is that a cat came into the population in the country who had been in the city or the town population, and he had developed an immunity to the viruses that cats get. And that cat gets out into the country cats have no immunity. They've never been exposed to any population other than their own little cult out there. And that virus goes through and will just wipe them out in a week. So your population in the country can go from cats to zero. In the city, bring them in wherever you want to get them. But they'll survive very well in the city. And they'll survive in the country, too, of course.
Mm-hmm. So that can happen. What are the symptoms? Dr. Leigh, what are the symptoms of this plague that cats seem to get?
Well, in the country, they'll usually get cat diarrhea or scours, if you want to call it that, but it's diarrhea and vomiting. It's a viral infection, and they just won't eat, and it just wastes away to nothing. Feline leukopenia is one of them. There's several of them. Cats are very, very prone to viral problems. There's a whole plethora of vaccinations available to help fend these things off. But yeah, it's just typical, like the flu. Cat flu is probably the best thing to call it. But it can go through the population real fast. Older cats are usually immune. Younger cats are more susceptible, just because of the tolerance and the immunity that an older cat has built up. Younger cats haven't been around long enough to develop any kind of immunity. But yeah, any virus problems are serious in all animals as they are in people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, to answer your question, we do have cats here at the farm. We have four cats, and they all have jobs. And number one on their list is mice. And literally, that is number one on their list. So they go out into the barn and they hunt, and I appreciate the work that they do, because if you have if you have a tractor or tractors in your barn, or you store it outside, and there's a hood on it to protect the engine and some of the running gear, mice seem to like that protection. And then they build their nests in there, and that would be all right. But what's not all right is they try to build their nests out of wire, pieces of hose, rubber tubing, vacuum lines, and they chew through the insulation. It causes shorts. They actually chew through the wire, and they take pieces of wire 3 or 4 inches long, and they build their nest with that. Now you don't have connections where you need them, and it's a problem for farmers. So what we do is we simply have cats who are on patrol, and we let them patrol, and we tell them, what a good job they've done when they've taken down some mice. And we really do appreciate it. Those mice will climb into air filters.
And his home burnt down, and his tractor, his equipment is still out there in the area. So he doesn't get out there very often. He went out one day, I don't know how long ago it was, but went to start the tractor, and wouldn't start, raise the hood, and here the pack rats had set up a colony in there. I've never heard of this before. But he had a colony of pack rats living in his tractor in the motor area. So that would be a lot worse than mice. Mice are bad enough. Rats would be horrible. But yeah, they do a great job, cats do. And you just put them out there and feed them well, but also don't overfeed them because make them hungry. They hunt because they're hungry. So you got to keep them sort of on the brink of a little bit of a hunger situation. Not starving. Feed them. But, make sure that they get enough exposure to these animals that you want them to get rid of.
We have we have several four-wheelers here on the farm that we go and check the cows. It's the easiest way to go half a mile or a mile away through the fields and streams and so forth is just hop on a four-wheeler and go and check the cows multiple times per day, repair small fence problems and so forth. And one day, one of the four-wheelers wouldn't start. And I asked our son if he checked the air filter before we started because he hadn't used it for a few days. And he said no. And I said, well, I think that's the problem. So we went out, popped the seat off, and sure enough, there was a nest for mice in the air cleaner box. And what had happened is this group of mice got some grain, they got some bird seed, and they chewed through the air filter. And when he went to start the engine, the intake inhaled all of this grain. And it was a two-cycle, it's a Yamaha two-stroke four-wheeler. And we had to do a little bit of surgery on the engine to get the grain out so it would start again. But yeah, it's a real problem. So when you mentioned hunting, what we've noticed, Dr. Leigh, is that the cats who go outside and capture mice, their coats, their hair seems to be more healthy. Is that just something that we're imagining, or is that really true?
No, that's probably true, because I guess you'd call it the X factor. There's certain things that they get by eating the entire animal. If they catch a mouse, they're going to eat the whole thing. They'll just sit there and eat. They'll eat the skin, the hair, the bones, the intestinal tract, the liver. The liver's the most nutritious thing there is probably in the animal. But they'll eat all of that. And I was in Africa one time. Let's go back to cats a bit. And I saw a kill of a lion killing a zebra. And they got this, and I won't tell you what the order was. It's a pecking order, who ate first and last. But at any rate, the first thing they went in when they killed this animal was to get into the abdomen and stick their head in there and eat the liver and all of the intestinal contents in that area. They didn't go for the meat and the legs or anything like that. It was what was inside that they were after. That's where all the nutrition is. The outside part was cleaned up by the other wild animals, the wildebeest, and God knows who else shows up there. But they ate the meat on the bones. But these wild cats, and this it carries over to our domestic cats too, because a cat's a cat. Genetically, they may be a little bit different in appearance, but as far as their physiology, it's about the same. So they do get a lot of nutrition from things that we would consider pretty disgusting. But it's part of the world. It's what they do out there. But But yes, they will look a lot better if they're getting something. I had a lady one time come in the office, and I don't know how she got this idea, but she fed her dogs exclusively raw chicken. And that's all she gave them. And these animals were surviving fine. Now, I don't know. She got the bones and everything, which is contrary to what I would ever recommend. But that's what she did. And she swore by this diet that she picked up someplace. So there's something to the bones and everything else that they get when they're in the wild. But they will look better. They will look better. But
there's the only thing that seems to be left.
Too much, unless you have a strong stomach.
The only thing that seems to be left when our cats go hunting for mice is just part of the head. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else seems to disappear. But they bring the heads as if they're trophies, or they're saying, "Hey, look what I've done to earn my keep," and they'll put that right by the door, of the farmhouse.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had a cat around back, and she would get into the moles out of the ground, which I was very happy about. But she'd bring them into the porch, and she'd get them in the house if she could. But we kept her outside most of the time. But yeah, they do want to bring a trophy back and show you what they've done. I guess it's part of the mechanism.
Do we know why? Do we know why cats purr? Do we know what that means?
No, I've looked around and I can't find any good description. I honestly don't know. I've been asked this question. I've looked on the internet and I've looked around, and there's all kinds of theories that it's a fluttering of the valve in the heart and it's in the throat and God knows where it is. But I don't know. I really don't. And if anybody out there does know it, have them call you and you call me. I'd like to know too. But,
or they can call in right now, 866-582-9933. Dr. Doug Leigh is with us. He's a retired veterinarian, many, many years in service to animals. And Dr. Leigh, we've seen cats that appear to be overweight, and their bellies seem to be hanging a lot lower than they should. As a matter of fact, obesity has hit cats as well as humans. When we come back from this short commercial break, can you tell us, is that a sign of something we need to be concerned about? Are we overfeeding the wrong food? What does that mean? Cats with dragging bellies. We'll be right back. Dr. Doug Leigh's with us, and we're talking about cats, and cats are the number 2 most popular pet in the United States, second only to freshwater fish. A lot of people have fish. We do, but ours are in a pond, and they're there in case we need to, eat some. But dragging bellies, Dr. Leigh, I've noticed that some cats, their bellies drag pretty low, and they've got this too much skin down there. Do we know what that is?
Before we get into that, let me give you a little bit of trivia. We were just talking about cats and the rural areas. A little trivia. If you'll notice in the Midwest, the towns are roughly 10 miles apart. And you're probably very much aware of that.
Yeah, sure.
The reason for that is it took a wagon of a pioneer. It took him 1 day to go 10 miles. So they would start off from this place, and 10 miles later they go to this other place where there's a little town. And, of course, the town, probably somebody there had a little settlement or something, and that's where they had water. The town will be named after the guy probably who started it, or some situation like trees, walnut trees. There's Walnut Grove here in Missouri. There's Ash Grove and so forth. But I thought it was pretty interesting that it took them 1 day to go 10 miles in a covered wagon. So that's why the towns are roughly 10 miles apart. So I
not
that
only
the other day.
Not only that, Dr. Leigh, if you were going to town and you just had a horse and you were going to take back your supplies, you probably would put the supplies on the horse and walk alongside the horse. Lead the horse to where you. Yeah. So that would be a determining factor in how far the towns were apart as well.
Yeah.
So what about these dragging bellies?
One night for 15 miles, and that was a killer. If I'd ever do that again. Okay, now the cat situation. Yeah. We're talking about fat cats, not people fat cats. We're talking about cats. I don't know what the answer is to fat cats. Yes, eating is a factor. But there was a cat in town here in a pet shop. That cat weighed about 28 pounds, I think. It was just a big blob. That's about all I can describe it as. And it just laid there and walked from here to there and that laid down. Now, I don't know what they ever checked that cat for, but I know I have had cats come in, and I have done all kinds of lab work on them and came up with nothing. And I have known people who have been in the same situation in other parts of the country and have come up with no answer as to why the cat is fat. And usually the cattle stay fat and function perfectly well. Now, granted, most of them have been spayed, but that's another topic we could discuss here. But yeah, they do get a little fatter from being spayed. But they seem to live a normal life if fat. It's hard on their liver, their kidneys, and their heart and everything else. But it seems as they get older, they'll go ahead and start to lose weight. Now, unfortunately, that can be from other things too, metabolic malfunctions and blood problems and organic problems. But they will usually lose weight when they get older, these big fat cats. But and for some reason, I don't know, it seems to be the females that seem to get the fatter, I think. The male, even if he's neutered, he doesn't seem to get quite as fat as the female, for whatever reason. But I don't have a good answer for it. I've done everything you could to come up with a diagnosis, but never did. And I know other veterinarians have had the same situation. Maybe somebody's got some magic thing they did that I don't know of. It may be possible, but I never found it. Never
What
did.
should we not feed our cats? I know antifreeze. If we have a drip of antifreeze in the garage, that'll kill them.
Yeah, antifreeze is very, very disastrous for any animal. It's sweet. They like the taste of it. They like the taste of alcohol too. So they'll if it drips out of your car and there's a puddle there, they may go ahead and lick it, and it will tear the liver and the kidneys up unbelievably. There's no turning it back on antifreeze. So you got to be very careful. Now, what else? What should you not feed them? Of course, you see this picture of the cat eating a raw fish. We'll cover that when we get back.
Okay. Dr. Doug Leigh's with us, veterinarian, and we're talking about cats exclusively today. We'll talk about ear mites, we'll talk about spaying and neutering, and we'll talk about how hairy they are when we get back. Dr. Doug Leigh and I have been talking about what not to feed cats. We mentioned antifreeze is absolutely deadly for animals. And
let me go back a second on the antifreeze. There's something that you can do if you see your animal eat antifreeze, rat poison, something they should not eat. And you can, the quicker you get that out of their system, the better. So, to jump in the car, run to the veterinarian. I don't know how far you may live from a veterinarian, but a lot of it can start to be absorbed pretty quickly. Table salt, plain old table salt. Just open their mouth up, pour that down there. How much can you pour down? Don't worry about it. They're going to bring it back up. And give them a little bit of water, too, because they'll drink some water after you put that down. But they will eventually bring that up, and that will bring up the antifreeze, any kind of a rat poison or anything that you don't want them to consume. So salt is as good as anything. Now, you can buy Ipecac and so forth in the drugstores to make them vomit, but you got to get it out quick, and you go to the drugstore. You're wasting time. Quicker you get it out, the better. Salt. Remember that one.
Okay. So, Dr. Leigh, the reason for the salt is not because of the chemical nature as much as it is to induce vomiting. Is that right?
Induce vomiting. That's all you want. Mm-hmm. Get it out of there.
Okay. What else should we not feed our cats? You talked about bones, and I think you were talking about these little sharp needle-type bones.
Oh, yeah.
That is in chicken, right?
Yeah, chicken is probably the worst one as far as bones go. But all bones, can go ahead and get into the digestive system. They can puncture and scrape and irritate the digestive system, and quite frankly, they get down into the bowel area, the rectum, and they'll form a dam. I mean, they'll plug everything up there, and the only way to get them out of there is with an enema, and it isn't much fun. You've got to literally get in there and dig these out. But you don't want to go with bones. Now, as far as feeds, really, if you feed, first of all, I think dry foods are probably the better food as compared to canned foods. They like canned foods. They're more tasty. But once again, you're going to have teeth problems. And if you get them hooked on the canned food, it takes a lot of willpower to get them off of it, because they won't eat anything else, but they won't starve themselves to death either. So if you switch over to dry and just hang in there, they'll start to eat it. Dry foods, or any food, you're going to get what you pay for, whether it be dog, cat, or whatever, cattle. It makes no difference, because it costs every manufacturer X number of dollars to buy 100 pounds of an additive. And no matter what it may be, so what that additive is going to cost the same for every manufacturer. And what the difference in the price is of the food is what additives he's adding to it. And the additives, by that I mean, the calcium, the phosphorus, and all of this stuff that goes into animal feeds. But if you feed a good quality one, that should take care of everything. And as far as what not to feed, you see the picture of the cat down on the fishing dock, and the fisherman is bringing in the fish, and the cat's sitting over there enjoying the fish. In my opinion, they don't go crazy over fish. Sounds good, but they'd rather have lamb or chicken or something like that. That's more palatable to them than anything. And if you try to give them medication, use chicken. Chicken animals will eat very, very quickly as compared to other foods. But as far as anything not to feed, I would say primarily stay away from the bones and just feed a good quality food.
Mm-hmm. What we feed our cats here at the farm is a good quality dry cat food, and then we let them supplement whatever they can find around the house and around the farmhouse. And it seems to work exactly as you're saying. It seems to work just fine.
Oh, yeah. The dry food has everything you need in it, but you're going to get what you pay for. You can go places and find a bag of dog food dog food, cat food, whatever, for $8, but then the one next to it may cost you $20. There's a difference, quite a difference. Tough to put out $20, but in the end, you may be better off. And of course, the dry food will help to maintain the teeth and keep them clean. So you don't have to put money into having the teeth clean, which can get expensive, because you do have to put an animal out to clean the teeth. You can't do it without it.
From what I've researched, a typical cat has about 130,000 hairs per square inch. So for those who are allergic, to hairs, cat hairs, is there a solution? Are there some cats that have fewer hairs or shed less?
Oh, yeah. Well, there are certainly. In fact, there's even hairless cats. There's so many darn cat breeds out there. It's unbelievable. And there's some really strange-looking ones. But, yes, which, again, you get into plain old domestic cat, you can get anything from real heavy, thick hair coats that have to be combed or brushed in order to maintain them and keep them from matting. Because if they mat, then it gets thick enough, you're going to have that cat shaved, which isn't bad for them, really, but if they don't like it, once they get used to it, it's okay, but they don't like having that done. But there's a little secret to combing, too. When you comb a cat and brush a cat, you're creating static electricity. As a matter of fact, in some individuals, you can even feel the sparks jumping off your arms. And I've had cats that we've combed it. I've felt that. A little secret to go ahead and reduce that is to take one of these drying sheets from the laundry that are anti-static and just rub that over the cat as you're combing them and brushing them, whatever you're doing. And that will tend to reduce the static electricity. The static shocks the cat, too. So that's why when you start to comb or brush, they start jumping around because you're getting shock. You can't blame them for wanting to get away. Gosh, I'd want to get out of there, too. but yeah, and if you have a heavy-coated cat, you're going to have to go ahead and keep them combed out, or you're going to have a mess. And once again, you get the mess, get it back around the rear end. And as we mentioned at one point, maggots can develop, although not as quickly in cats, because cats tend to keep flies away a little better than dogs do. But, you can have that problem, too, if you get too much and it attracts the flies. But combing is important, and hair coats. There's all kinds of hair coats out there, but if you go to the Humane Society or get a cat from your neighbor up the street, it's probably just going to be a plain old domestic cat and have hair that either short hair or long hair, and long hair has to be combed. Short hair, you don't have to comb that much.
How about worming? We found that the cats who eat mice outside seem to be more prone to getting worms. Is that true, or is that just?
Tapeworms are probably your biggest problem in cats. And, of course, fleas are the carriers on tapeworms, and they'll go ahead and get these. What happens is the flea larva, well, first of all, a tapeworm is probably about, a foot long or so. And it all starts up at the head, and the head attaches to the intestine, and these segments grow, and then they fall off at the tail end. And the one starts up at the head, a couple of weeks later, maybe back at the tail end. Segments are about, half an inch long, and they look like pieces of rice. And when they dry, they look like small pieces of dried rice. Inside that are eggs. Now, when that breaks open, the flea larva eat the eggs, and then that larva develops into an adult flea. The dog or the cat or the mouse or whatever may go ahead and turn around and swallow that flea. That flea then, having eaten the egg or the eggs as a larval stage, eating the eggs of the tapeworm, that flea will then go ahead and develop into a tapeworm. You got one tapeworm, segments coming out, and that begins to multiply. And you would be surprised how many full worms, come out of an animal that has been wormed with one of the old-time medications that literally paralyzed the worm and blew him out of there. But it could be a mess. It could be a real mess.
What do you recommend, Dr. Leigh, for treatment of worms, these tapeworms? What medication or what do you recommend? Is there something that is not a prescription?
Yeah, there's some things over the counter, but you get into tapeworms, you're probably better off to get a prescription pill from your veterinarian. Now, if you have roundworms are pretty easy. Hookworms you can't see because they're too small. And you have whipworms and dogs, you can't see those too easily, but there are worm medications. The ones you can see are the roundworms that look like spaghetti or toothpicks. Look like round toothpicks. That's a roundworm. Those are very common. You can get any kind of medication over the counter for those. Tapeworm medication, I don't believe there's anything that's real good over the counter. Unfortunately, probably one of the best ones is a little bit expensive, but in the end, it'll do the job, and it doesn't cause any diarrhea or messes, which you really don't want. But you can get some things over the counter, but make sure you know what you're getting. You don't want to go and get a worm pill for a roundworm, which is the one that looks like a toothpick. You don't want to get worm medication for that if you've got tapeworms. And conversely, you don't want to get tapeworm medication if you have roundworms. You're not going to do any good.
Okay.
There are some wormers out there that will take care of everything. And that's one of those that I talked about that's a little bit expensive, but it is a prescription one from your veterinarian.
Okay. What about urinary tract infections? Cats that have trouble urinating. Is that getting more common or not?
Yeah. Urinary tract infections are common, and it's very symptomatic. The cat is sitting on the litter pan, and he walks away, or they walk away, male or female, and they walk right back, and then they're at it again. You may see blood, you may not see anything, you may just see them sitting on the litter pan all the time. The female, she can get a urinary tract infection, but there's really nothing too serious about those. Now, some of the things that may look like infections could also be stones in there, because animals do get bladder stones in their urinary bladder. And it could be anything from one round stone to stuff like gravel or sand. And you have to get that out of there. That's surgery usually.
Okay. So there's not an easy way to dissolve.
I've got some other stuff about male cats I want to cover. So.
Okay, great. Okay, we've got a segment coming up, and spaying and neutering and ear mites if you can,
yep.
And whatever else you have. Dr. Leigh's with us, DVM. We'll be right back. This segment. Did we lose Dr. Leigh? Oh.
I'm here.
Okay, great. You had a few things you wanted to cover, right?
Yeah, the male cat, this could be a serious situation. The male cat's penis has a taper in it. It's like a funnel. And when he gets any kind of an infection, he tends to develop some sandy material. And the sandy material comes down and it gets to that taper in the funnel and it plugs things up. When he can't urinate, he's sitting on that litter pan, he's straining, he may be crying even because he's hurting. But the urine continues to produce, and it comes down. It can't go anyplace because of the obstruction in the urethra from that sandy material. So it backs up, and it begins to damage the kidneys. It will literally, the pressure from the urine buildup will literally blow the kidneys apart. I mean, you can't see it. It's all microscopic. But then you have a kidney that doesn't function anymore, and the animal becomes uremic. Now, how does he get the infection to start with? First of all, when the tomcat urinates, he squats into the litter pan and he extends the penis a little bit, and that goes into the litter. When that goes into the litter, there's all kinds of bacteria in the litter, gets into the urethra, goes up, and that's where he gets the infection from. How do you treat this? You have to get that blockage out of there. Now, there are several ways. You can backwash it with a syringe. I had a piece of equipment that was a high-frequency probe, and you'd put that up there and literally blow the sandy blockage apart. And sometimes you even get into a situation where you have to do surgery on it and split the penis in half and get back to beyond that taper and literally do away with that. He has no penis then. But usually this happens in probably a little more prone in neutered males. The wild animals, they don't seem to get that much problem as much. But that's another topic. What age should you neuter? And I think this is one reason why you should neuter a tomcat when he's at least 6 months old, in order to avoid stopping the growth of the urethra, which is where the urine goes down, and making that penis diameter smaller in where the urine goes, and reducing the size of the area that the urine has to go through, thus the sandy stuff causing an obstruction. But that's okay. Another subject here.
So that's wait 6 months before the procedure.
Okay. That's my opinion. Now, I know they're neutering much younger, and of course they're trying to cut down the cat population, which is fine, but I think you're leading to a potential problem. My thinking is, if you give the cat every chance you can to prevent this problem, and if you can wait until he's 6 months old to help maybe prevent it, let's do it. If you don't, maybe you're causing more of a problem for him.
Okay.
But, you can just imagine what that must feel like, for God's sake, to have to be able to go to the bathroom and hurting because you obviously must have pain in the abdomen, and you can't do anything, and you can't talk. So you got to depend upon the guy standing there watching you.
Yeah.
But it can be a serious problem, and they do die from this very, very commonly. Very commonly.
I got a call here at the farmhouse. A message was left. One of our class members was listening, and he heard you and me weeks ago, but he called last night, and he wanted to know about ear mites. What is your recommendation for ear mites for cats?
Well, for cat or dog. Okay. Of course, there's commercial preparations over the counter you can get. First of all, you have to get that debris out of there. You can go ahead and take a Q-tip, and I covered how to clean that when you go straight down and back. Don't go forward, but go back, because then you'll push the debris up out of there. I even sometimes have put alcohol in there, rubbing alcohol, to help soften that up and loosen it up a little bit and get as much of that out as you can. Remember, scoop from the front to the back, and there's actually a little bit of a shoot-like effect in the ear. Now, to treat it, you could use baby oil, mineral oil, castor oil. Probably Campho-Phenique is probably the best thing. These will kill the mite. The preparations over the counter have a little insecticide in them. But literally, you're smothering the mite to death with the oil preparation. And there's the stuff in Campho-Phenique, I think, helps to kill them also.
Great. We're out of time. Dr. Leigh, we are out of time. Thanks so much for being with us today. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. You know, today it looks like Omar, O-M-A-R, is out of a job. Omar the tent maker is no longer needed as the dress designer at the White House. Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm doing so well, Vince. You know, when I just realized listening to the news there that we're going to be on the air when Trump is sworn into office.
Yeah.
And that's historic, you know, because when I think about Obama leaving town, I think of an old country song that used to go like, "Thank God and Greyhound, she's gone."
You know, I was looking forward to this day for so long, and I didn't think we were actually going to get here. I thought he was going to start a war. He was going to do something, and so many people agreed with that we weren't going to get rid of those bums. And you know, it's great that the Clinton dynasty, you know, at least for the most part, is over, unless she's going to run for mayor of New York City if they're dumb enough to select her for that. But it is great. Good riddance, Barry. You know, I don't want to wish any evil on him, but gosh, it's great to have him out of the White House causing problems. There's so many things that. Well, maybe I should publish a list of his failures. It's unbelievable that somebody could accomplish so many failures in 8 years. It's amazing. But good riddance to Barry and the bandits.
Yep. What's worse to me, Vince, is that he seems to be delusional enough that he doesn't think that they're failures. They're actually accomplishments.
Yeah, and the misguided, delusional press seems to feel the same way. I can't get over it. But good riddance to Barry and the bandits. I'm looking forward to a new era. I wish Donald Trump health and success.
Yep.
Our prayers are with him, and we hope that nothing evil happens to him. There are a bunch of really misguided, stupid people out there who are causing all kinds of problems. They should realize that we are removing problems from our way by having Donald Trump as CEO as compared with Barry and his band of thugs and thieves.
Yep. It's a sad
Kyle,
situation that we've kind of gotten down to, you know, where you have people that want this progressive, communistic approach to life without having to take care of anything yourself, to do anything yourself. It's sad that so much of our country is actually not only bought into it, but determined to have it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and a great segue into what we're going to be talking about today. We'll be talking about tips and tricks of the trade. We're going to, Kyle Harris, USA Prepares instructor, at one time a listener in class, and that was years ago, and he's joined the faculty to contribute to things that he has learned. And Kyle calls in a lot, and I'm just delighted to be doing this broadcast with Kyle. And we're going to talk about how we do things, how we have found secrets to do things easier, cheaper, faster, smarter, and better. And let me start with one that hits home. During the commercial break, top of the hour news, I ran over to the kitchen and got got something to drink, and it reminded me of a situation that was driving me crazy in our kitchen. Our kitchen has about 15 recessed lights. Sometimes they're called can lights. And 11 years ago or so, when we built this farmhouse, our son and I were in the kitchen, and we were positioning these can lights so that they would be over the counters and in front of the refrigerator and in key areas in the kitchen, so that they would shine light downward, but not cast shadows when you're at the counter, not cast shadows as you're working in the kitchen. And so we didn't want to have too many of them, and we didn't want to have not enough. So we, at night, when it was dark, we positioned these and turned them on and figured out the best place for them. Okay. And that was during the construction of the house. So there are about 15 of these. And what we found out was, initially we put the compact fluorescent light bulbs in there, and they said, lifetime, 7-year life expectancy, and they would last maybe a year. And at $3 a piece back then, it was like, wow, these things are burning out really fast. And we figured out why. Because they were inserted upside down. So you'd screw them in where the base would be up and the bulb would be down. And the electronics would get hot in these can lights where there's not a lot of air to cool them off, and they would fail. If you had that same light facing when you screw it down into a socket rather than up into a socket, they lasted a lot longer. If they were horizontal, they seemed to last the longest. Like in a wall sconce where the bulb might be horizontal, they seem to last the longest. So anyway, I became disenchanted with them because of the life expectancy, and then I thought, well, what about the electromagnetic radiation? What about the high frequencies that they emit? Maybe that's driving our dogs crazy. So we dumped the compact fluorescent lights. We started using incandescent lights, and these cans are rated for about 75 watts because there's a thermal device in there that if the can gets too hot, it opens the circuit and the light bulb goes out. So you can't overheat it if this thermal device works. Well, those light bulbs, the incandescent bulbs, didn't seem to last very long either. So here's what I did. With my frustration at peaking, I decided I would try something. So I went on the internet and I bought light bulb extenders. And these things are about 1.25 inches long. Now, if you do this class, do not buy the Chinese ones. They're absolutely no good. They will melt. How do I know? I tried it. So I bought these made by Leviton, an old company, and some guy had new old stock, meaning brand new, but old stock, made in the United States, and he had a bunch of them, and I bought them all. I bought every one he had, and I screwed these into the can lights, and then I screwed the light bulbs into that. Now, we were burning out in the kitchen at least one light bulb a week, literally, maybe two. And now, we've had these in for weeks now, and we haven't had a single light bulb failure. So here's what happened. By lowering toward the floor the light bulb by 1.25 inches, we allowed more air to circulate in the can. The kitchen became about, I'm guessing, 30% brighter with the same exact light bulbs, and we haven't had a light bulb failure yet. And let me just say one more thing, and I'd love to hear your comment, Kyle. So knowing that I'm a pretty frugal guy, you can imagine that I don't buy one of anything. And there was a guy selling 230-volt light bulbs, 500 in a case, for about $100 shipped. So I bought them all. I bought 500 of them. And now our house was wired for 120 volts, at the ceiling outlets or the ceiling can lights. But because I had a direct circuit for that, I just converted it by just adding another circuit breaker and changing a switch from a single pole switch to a double pole switch. And now I have 240 volt lighting circuit in the kitchen, and I've got 230 volt bulbs in it, and they've worked great. So now I've got these bulbs that are roughly 15 cents a piece plus shipping, and I've got probably a lifetime supply of them, and they haven't burned out yet. So they will, of course, but not like they were. Your thoughts, Kyle?
Boy, that's really brilliant, Vince. What are these the bulbs that you bought? What's the rated wattage?
They are 30 watts, which is very, very low. But and it was kind of dim. I was using 13-watt compact fluorescent bulbs, and they didn't last. So I switched to these 30 watts. Now, would I have bought 30 watts initially? Probably I would have looked for something maybe like 40 watts. to keep the temperature down, but they're 30 watts. And by lowering the position in the can, they are much, much brighter. So now they're plenty bright for lighting up the kitchen.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Vince. We've come across something that I needed some lights in my shop, and I wanted to be able to use LEDs. Well, my wife, one day, she's on her way to town, and she's dropping off the trash at the little trash collecting place in here. And anyway, she sees these China top. They look like the old style Chinese hats that just they just fan out. They're about 14 or 16 inches in diameter, and they kind of cone up to the fixture. But anyway, so she finds these things, and there's about 8 of them, and they threw them away. So she said, well, I'm going to bring them home and see if you can use them. And so I thought, okay, go ahead and bring them home. Worst case scenario, I'll take them back. Well, they were white, and so in order to put them up in my shop, I had to cut a 2x4 and kind of tight and put it in between these double rafters that are about 9'6" apart. And so I knew they weren't going to be holding much weight because each one of these fixtures only weighs about a pound at most. And so I put these 2x4s across those rafters, 4 of them, so that I would have, be spanning approximately 20 feet where the area where I work in. And anyway, I went up there and I ran the wire up to it, and I bought metal boxes. Just went down to Lowe's and I bought some metal boxes, 6 of them. So I took the metal boxes and run the wire through them and pulled all the wire. So then I bought a metal blank. I can finish this on the other side.
Okay, all right. So Kyle Harris is with us, and we're talking about some tricks of the trade, things that we've learned to save a lot of money and things that work better. So here's what I have on the list: how to remove an old radiator hose. What do you do with old motor oil? How do you find a leak in a tire? Class Kyle Harris is with us, and we're going to share some more tips that we've learned over the years with you. Kyle, you were installing some light fixtures in your work area. Please continue.
Yeah, anyway, I put 6 of these boxes up there. I bought some steel blanks, and I cut the wires off for these China top fixtures, and I drilled a hole in the blank, pulled the wire up through it, tied a knot in it, and stripped out about 4 inches to connect to my Romex that was being run through there. And then we picked up some of these LED. They look like a tube. They're LED lights. They're probably about 1 inch in diameter and about maybe 4 inches long, but in bright white. And they reflect off of those white reflector China top looking things just incredibly. It's like walking into daylight in there. I just, it was just something we picked up from the dump and reused, and it worked
Great.
really good,
What was your total cost for these 6 completed 6 fixtures with the LEDs?
Well, you figure I bought 14 gauge wire because I knew I was running LED. I used about half of that roll. I ran 2 up at the loft and 6 out into the shop. And I would figure I got maybe a total of about $60, $65 in it.
Great deal. And lighting fixtures, class, the reason we use can lights in our, I have 4 of them in the studio. The reason we've done that is they seem to go with everything. They're timeless, so they're not going to go out of style. And they're relatively inexpensive. I believe that we paid about $6.66 when we bought several cases of them for our house. So $6.66 each. and we've got them all over the place. And they come with the trim rings, and they work really, really nicely. So that's one thought. Kyle, I was reading an article. I had a problem. I bought a used Mercedes. I just had it with these computer cars, and I wanted to go backwards in time. So I bought a 1996 Mercedes diesel E300D for diesel. And when I bought it, the engine ran rough. And the guy said, yeah, engine runs rough. It's probably a glow plug. So I thought, okay, I brought my tester out, my OBD2 tester. You can get them for $20 to $30 on the internet. And I plugged it in, and I asked him if he'd mind if I, just did my own diagnostics. He said, no, that'd be fine. Sure enough, what he said was right, and the diagnostic tool told me that it was a relay or a glow plug problem. So I get the engine really ran rough when you started it, so it was a slight risk of buying this thing, but it was a very fair price. So anyway, I got it home, and I went to take the glow plugs out, the intake manifold and all that, and it was a pretty significant job. But when you take the glow plugs out of a Mercedes, they tend to get stuck, and you can break them off. And Mercedes says, "Oh, well, if that happens, you just take the head off." Now you're talking about a really extensive job. So I was looking into penetrating oils, and I found this article about penetrating oils. Now, would you like to share what you have found first? Because what you found exactly the same thing that I learned about on the internet.
Yeah, an old farmer actually is the one that kind of told me about this years ago. And if you take acetone, about somewhere between 70-30 and 50-50 mix of acetone and automatic transmission fluid. Now, if you mix this up and you try to put it in a soap bottle or something, it will just dissolve it. So you need something along the lines of a toilet bowl cleaner bottle, some kind of, or one of the old stable that has a gas additive in it, or a seafoam steel can, something along those lines. If you mix this up, to be able to, and it has to be able to seal up tightly, because otherwise the acetone will evaporate off. But that mixture of approximately 50-50 to 70-30, 70% ATF to 30% acetone, and you put that on the bolts, or around the threads of whatever you're trying to take off, works better for breaking rusty bolts loose than anything I've ever found. Yes,
and this article, you're exactly right. This article says that it was in the jalopyjournal.com, and it's been republished from lots of different other sources. I don't know what the original source was, but I'll tell you what this article says, and it's absolutely stunning. So if you have stubborn, rusted nuts, bolts, brake drums, fuel lines, hydraulic lines. Kyle Harris is with us, and we're sharing some tricks of the trade. About a decade ago in the Machinist Workshop magazine, there was a article about penetrating oil, and it's about how do you loosen rusted nuts and bolts and those kinds of things. And what they did was they we'll call it scientifically rusted some nuts and bolts to get a sample that were very similar. And what they did was they tested WD-40, PB Blaster, liquid wrench, and something called Cano oil, and also the mixture that Kyle is telling us about, automatic transmission fluid and acetone, and they used a 50-50 mix. So what they found out was they put a torque wrench on these rusted nuts, and they did nothing to one of them. And how much torque did it take to loosen it? Well, 516 pounds, 516. Then they used WD-40, and it took about half as much torque to loosen the nut, and that would be 238 pounds. That's WD-40. By the way, WD-40 is not really a designed for loosening nuts and bolts. It's really a water displacement type of formulation. WD stands for water displacement. 40 was the 40th attempt at a formula that finally worked. So the 40th one worked. WD-40 is the name. Another one is PB Blaster. That was a little better at 214 pounds to loosen that nut. Liquid Wrench came in pretty well, 127 pounds. Liquid Wrench has been around for as long as I can remember. I used to use it in a little oil-type can. It was 29 cents when I was very young back in the 50s and 60s. And I still have a can from back then. I use it very sparingly. And then there's another one called Kano, K-A-N-O, and the product's name is Kroil, K-R-O-I-L, 106 pounds. So no assisting penetrating oil, 516 pounds, Liquid Wrench, 127, Kroil, 106. Now, the winner by far is automatic transmission fluid and acetone mixed 50-50, 53 pounds. 1/10 the amount of torque required as compared with using nothing. So that's the hands down winner. So Kyle, you're absolutely right about that, and that's what I'm going to use in the future. I'm going to mix it and store it in the type of containers that you mentioned previously. And by the way, you can save about, if you're going to buy a mixture in a can, Liquid Wrench is probably your best value. It's about 20% the cost of the Kroil, K-R-O-I-L. So that's that. Kyle, any additional thoughts, or do you want to go on to the next
Well, we can go on to the next thing, Vince. I was just going to mention to you the old farmer guy that I love talking to old farmers and old vets, like the guy you had on here the last hour and stuff like that. Those guys just have learned, and they've forgotten more, than most of us will ever know. And but anyway, the other thing that he did, and you kind of made me think of it, I don't know why, but he would take those pails that you've got ice cream in, the old plastic pails that came with a lid, and he had, when he had his baler going, he had there's a chain drive to it, and so he would put that and he would hang it so that it was on a hook, and he would fill that with bar oil. Or not all the way up, of course. He put a couple of inches in there of bar oil, and he'd have a paintbrush in there, and just so the paintbrush would be standing up at an angle. And as he was traveling along, whenever his chain started getting dry from the dust and stuff like that, he would take that paintbrush and paint that bar oil onto his chain, just for continuous lubrication. And it's just a pretty smart idea, I thought. But the same guy just told me about both different things, so it's just kind of I've seen it, not told me about it. I just saw him do it. But Anyway, I just always thought that was a great idea,
Yeah, and when you mention bar oil, for those who are not familiar, what Kyle means is oil that's used for lubricating the chainsaw bar, and it's sold in quarts and gallons, and it's like a 30-weight oil with a tacky additive, and that's bar oil. By the way, Kyle, what do you do with used motor oil in your neck of the woods?
Well, I store it in 1 gallon. I save all my old 1-gallon cans of stuff, that came with oil in it, and I put the used motor oil back in there of whatever I'm draining out. And I have used it when I was putting up the edge of. I wanted a lean-to off of my shop that would be about 40 feet long, and I took the 4x4s that because I'm having to always do everything on a penny, you know what I mean? But I had some old 4x4s, and I took those 4x4s, and I filled up 2 5-gallon buckets about 2/3 of the way, somewhere between half and 2/3 of the way full, and then I stuck those 4x4s that I was going to use for my uprights, because to be sitting on concrete pads, I stuck those in that motor oil, and I let them soak there for about 3 weeks to a month before I even attempted to start putting them in there. And they'll be good for my lifetime anyway.
Mm-hmm. But now some farmers will find that they're.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kyle. Okay, some farmers will find that ants will attack their posts. And what they'll do is they'll take a small amount of that used motor oil and pour it very carefully, not much, maybe an ounce, around the perimeter of those posts where the ants are eating it, and it stops the ants from eating the post.
I'm sure it does. It would stop me. A long time ago, I remember I was in a pinch. My wife and I, we were really tight financially, and I had to. And we had needs to get firewood for the winter, and I used that used motor oil in the bar oil of my chainsaw. It goes through it faster; it'll run out faster, and you have to fill it up a little more often. But it worked just fine. I mean, it would throw. You could sure tell where you've been cutting because it was black, But it worked.
Yeah. We do the same. We do the same thing, and here's what we do, class. We do exactly what Kyle does. We will, when we drain the oil out of a vehicle, we separate the oil from the diesel engine oil versus gasoline engine oil, and we mark. We try to put it back in the original containers that we got it out of, typically gallon containers. So we have synthetic jugs of oil, gallon containers, conventional oil, diesel engine oil. And we try to use the gasoline engine oil after it's settled for lubricating. And I have a funnel, and I use coffee filters. And I filter the oil with a coffee filter so to get out, some of the big particles. It's still microscopic, but I would call them, larger than I'd like. Or I use a good quality, like a Brawny brand paper towel, and I'll use that as a filter. I'll form it into a cone, put it inside a funnel, and then filter the used engine oil into that container, and then I'll mark it with a Sharpie that it's filtered used gasoline engine oil. So I know that I can use that for chainsaws and lubricating chains and so forth. So we don't throw much away here at the farm. I have a tip for finding leaks in a tire. I mean, how many tires go flat? So Kyle, what we do is we'll take some dishwashing detergent and put it in one of those containers like you're mentioning, like an ice cream, half-gallon ice cream bucket, or a cup. And we'll take a small paintbrush, like a 1-inch paintbrush, and the foaming dish detergent, the liquid dish detergent mixed with water, we'll paint that around the tire, and we'll look for air bubbles. We'll paint the rim on both sides, where the tire bead meets the rim. We'll paint the tire valve. We'll move the valve around. We'll paint the valve stem to see if it's leaking there. And we usually find the leaks very, very quickly. Sometimes you have to jack up the tire so you can rotate it, while you're looking. But it absolutely works. What other tricks do you have?
Well, you reminded me of something, Vince. A guy can make, if you're in a pinch, a guy can make your own sealant. I don't know if you've ever tried this or not, and I have never tried it, but I have seen it done. An old guy I knew one time, he took about, in a container of a dish soap type container, he had it about half full of dish soap, and then he took some silicone caulk and squirted about half of that amount of dish soap that he had. He squirted about that much silicone caulk into that, and then a little bit of water, and shook that up until it all kind of blended. And I don't know how that blended, but anyway, he squirted that, took the valve stem out, not the stem, the little cord out of the valve stem, and squirted that in his tire, and he swore that would seal up a tire like crazy. I never did see how that ever worked out, and I was just wondering if you'd ever tried anything like that, to make it work.
No, I haven't done that. I'd be reluctant to try that because what is the effect of that later on when you dismount that tire? Are you going to have problems getting the next tire on and so forth? I don't know. So I'd be reluctant. What I do is I will dismount a tire if I have to. I bought some what's called patch plugs, and these things are a combination of a plug and a patch, about 2 inches square. And once you dismount the tire, you clean off the inside where the hole is. Let's say it's a large nail hole. You clean that off. You use rubber cement. You'll apply the rubber cement to the inside of the tire, and you pull the plug through from the inside toward the outside, and it seals the tire really well. It patches it and plugs it at the same time. So I bought about 15 of those because we're always getting flats. I mean, we have thorn trees here that will go right through a tractor tire, and it's a real problem because you can't really see them all the time. So we've got plenty of flat tires around here at the farm. As a matter of fact, we have so many flat tires that I bought 100 valve stems, cores, and valve caps. I mean, who does that? And how long will that last? Well, not very long, because we've got about 100 tires. Literally, about 100 tires. If you add up the vehicles, the tractors, the trailers, all the stuff that we use here at the farm, that would be like one per tire. So it's not really that many. But we're always getting flats. We have tire cement, and we buy it by the quart. We'll be right back. Kyle Harris, I really appreciate you being with us today. Now, I'm looking at a paper copy of an invoice that is for some auto parts, and I wanted to share this source with our class. I try to buy some of our auto parts from a company called Rock Auto, ROCKAUTO.com. And I'm going to give you some pricing differences. I looked up the price on spark plug wires for an old Jeep that we have, a 22-year-old Jeep. $17.99 at AutoZone, $12.65 at Rock Auto. I looked up another part, a belt, a serpentine belt, fan belt, alternator, power steering, radiator fan, water pump belt, $23.99 at AutoZone, $9.15 at Rock Auto. So those are indicative of some of the savings that I get by buying parts on the internet. And so rockauto.com, it's not a commercial. They don't support me. I don't even think they like us. But I buy parts from them because I can save a lot of money, and the choices are great. By the way, if you're going to buy spark plugs, I suggest you consider, let's see, I bought AC Delco spark plugs, Iridium, for one of our vehicles. There is I think it's a $3 rebate on AC Delco, and I also bought, where are the other spark plugs? Autolite, good rebates on them through the end of the year as well. So you might want to consider that if you're going to buy spark plugs. Kyle, thoughts in the last segment? Any tips that you want to share?
Well, I got a couple of them, Vince, I thought about. You know, one of my favorite funnels is to take a heat bottle, H-E-E-T, that they come in. The edge of it is kind of aligned with one side, because I like that. It just really fits in better with things, and I cut the bottom of it off, and then I use the cap, of course, keep the cap on there, and if you don't turn that thing right side up, like the cap is up and the bottom is down, it collects with dust. But if you drill a tiny hole into the cap, you can take an eye hook and put it on that drill, push it down into that cap, and then just hang it upright, and it's there for you to just spin off and use as a funnel. Another good little thing that I have found out, and this really isn't dealing with automotive, is that I always had trouble with hammerheads coming loose. And I found a little trick that works really well. I take there's usually when you put the handle of a hammer up into the head, they have a shim that goes in there, a metal shim, and they work out and loosen up and all that kind of stuff. But if you'll take the metal shim out and get a pine or some other type of a wood shim and drive that wood shim down into the hammerhead, and then take that and turn it upside down into a little pail of antifreeze, and just leave it there for about a week. It'll soak up that antifreeze, and the antifreeze won't evaporate off. And I've never had one that I treated like that to ever come loose.
Great tip. Let me go back to the funnels. So what you're saying is you take a bottle that you once had heat in, HEET, It's a product that you can get in an automotive store, but you can use another kind of funnel, like a bottle, like a quart automotive oil or engine oil bottle, and cut the bottom out as well, and make a funnel out of it. And we do the same thing here because it's a perfect size, and some of the angles of the bottles are just great if they have the long necks on them, the older style necks on these plastic quart bottles. And what we do exactly that. And what you're doing is to keep it upside down, or to keep the bottle with the cap toward the upright. The idea is to keep dust from getting in there. What we do is we keep those bottles that we've used with oils, because they're oily on the inside and they collect dust, and which is injurious to engines. We put them in Ziploc plastic bags, and we use that same plastic bag over and over and over. So we use it works great. It gets, it's kind of oily inside that bag after a while, but there's no dirt that gets in the bag because it's a Ziploc plastic bag. Any 20-second thoughts, Kyle?
Well, I just happened to think of an old veterinarian joke. You know how they make greyhounds so fast, Ben?
How's that, Kyle?
They take them to Alaska, and they turn them loose with the huskies, and then they give them a lot of water to drink, and trees are 10 miles apart.
Kyle Harris, thank you so much for being with us. And Omar's out of a job.